All right, remember how yesterday I had like a page left?
Yes.
Unfortunately.
In the bell ring.
So, and we're into gender. And remember how my AP students aren't going to be writing during the lecture? Don't worry about that stuff. That can be done later, and I can make it okay. I can make it okay. Okay, thank you. I will make it okay. Just get me the stuff within a reasonable amount of time, which means before the test, which is Thursday. So, get me the best you can before that.
What page am I going to?
We're going to start on 496. I'm just going to back it up one page of the module before. Diana Baumrind. What did she do?
Something about kids.
Parenting styles.
Oh, authoritarian.
Right? Authoritarian.
Permissive and authoritative.
Permissive and authoritative. A permissive parent leads to what type of child?
A spoiled child.
They think they can do anything they want. They got no boundaries. An authoritative parent leads to what type of child?
A child that
Good
understands.
child.
Well-adjusted. All right? What's the difference between authoritative and authoritarian?
Authoritarian tells you. They don't explain to you why they're telling you.
Authoritarian, you're doing it because
I said so.
I said so. All
I
right?
thought permissive was.
You said for what?
Yeah, that is.
Permissive, you can do anything you want.
That's me. My mom's all
All right, another quick question. Move on to the next module,
What page?
500, but I'm going to fly through that because we already did this in the beginning. All right? Harry Harlow. Raise your hand if you remember him. What did he do?
The experiment with the wire and the claw.
Yeah, and the monkeys. Yep. And what was the whole experiment really about? What were the monkeys trying? Attachment. Okay. How about Mary Ainsworth? What was the name of her experiment? Mary Ainsworth. Raise your hand if you know.
I know she did.
Strange situation. She observed the kids at home, then she had them come in with their parents, and she's basically the one that set up attachment strategies with parents. What percent of kids did she find out were actually securely attached? They're attached 60% or so. And a securely attached kid won't cry when the mom leaves? They will, all right? But they'll get over it. And when the mom comes back,
They run back to the home.
they're running to them. All right, so 500 is gender. Go to 501. Gender and aggression. Which gender is more aggressive?
Male.
Females.
Depends on what type of aggression we're talking about. Somebody, which gender you suppose wants to try to hurt you more up here?
Females.
And which gender would...
Males.
Yeah. All right, so gender and social connectedness, which gender is more connected socially with those around them?
Females.
By far, by far. Which gender text more? How much more? 2 to 3 times as much. By age 50, what happens to gender differences?
They go the same.
They kind of go away. All right? And so we're now on 504 where we were leaving off. All right? Gender identity. What's self-identity? Self-concept.
When you know about yourself.
What do you know about yourself? So gender identity is what you think about yourself as far as your gender. All right. Social learning theory. This is a theory. I actually, when I was working on my research for my dissertation, I was going to use social learning theory as the theory behind the basis of everything I did. So I'm pretty familiar with it. But basically, it's that people, especially kids, learn from watching others. That's really what that is. All right? How much do you buy that? I think there's a lot to it. I mean, there's certainly, we are very imitative, and you see someone yawn, we tend to yawn. The people that you hang out with, we tend to start adopting their language. If you hang out with people that smoke, you're more likely to start smoking. All right? You hang out with people, I hope you're not tapping her because you guys are smoking, but if you hang out with people that are more promiscuous as far as with sexual relations, you're more likely to be that way yourself. We are a lot of what we observe, especially the ones that we're closest to. Go to the top of 505 and look at the little boy. What is the little boy doing compared to the dad? Okay.
Play one.
Little kids are like gender detectives. They will figure out what the difference between a boy and a girl is, and they want to be whatever they are. And whatever they are, it's bad somehow. All right? So yeah, you get cooties and stuff like that. You don't want, if you're a 4-year-old boy, you certainly don't want any girl playing with you, touching your arm. You've got something bad will happen there. All right? And I don't know if it's the same for girls, but this module is almost done. The last thing on there is about transgender. Transgender is when someone was one gender at one point and they have physically been changed, biologically changed. Something's been cut off or something's been added on, one or the other. All right. Now, how does transgender relate to gender identity? Who you think you are. If you're a woman and you think you're a man, and so you go through the whole transgender process, I'm not judging it one way or the other, saying that's who you think you are. All right, let's answer a couple questions and we're done with that module. That was where I didn't get done yesterday. All right. According to research, what type of aggression is more common among males than females?
Physical aggression.
Physical aggression. Gender blank are the social expectations that guide women's behavior, and gender blank is a person's sense of being male or female.
D. Gender roles, identity.
What letter?
D.
Yeah, I think it's D. Which of the following is generally true of males? Longer lifespan?
No.
More likely to have a democratic leadership style? Heck no. More likely to commit suicide?
Yes.
More likely to be diagnosed with depression?
No.
More likely to be diagnosed with anxiety? No. In fact, believe it or not, females attempt suicide more than males, but they usually do it in like a pill or some kind of form where they're not as successful. Not that this is something to be proud to be successful in, but right. Diego likes to play sports and video games, whereas Sarah likes to sing, dance, and play house. This example best depicts the following
Schema. Gender schema.
No. It's not schema.
I don't think it's schema.
What?
I mean, I think I know where you're going with that, but I don't think it's schema.
I would say gender identity.
Or typing.
No.
Yeah, I think it is typing.
I think it's either got to be identity or typing. Which one is better?
Typing, because it sounds more professional.
Gender typing
I think it's gender typing.
is typing.
Yeah, because you feel as if like
More girls.
And
will
this
say
example
boys.
best depicts, I think it probably is typing.
Yeah, but I'm about
But-
to say Sarah can like play sports.
Schema is. Don't even.
Yeah.
You like my
And
Carol Gilligan, that's another one I forgot to give a little quiz at the beginning. Carol Gilligan's research emphasized prominent female characteristics, especially
B. Making social.
connections. All right, and you can see those practice FRQs is often where I get your FRQs. And you will get 1 or 2 or 3 FRQs, I can't remember which, on your test. So pay attention.
Next test, I'm gonna study.
FRQs on this test and every test following it. All right, we're going to try as hard as we can to do 50, 51, 52. None of them are long. The only one that's kind of long has Erickson in it, and we've already covered Erickson. My hope is that after we do 50 and 51, we'll take maybe a 15-minute break and play a Kahoot.
Yay!
Maybe we should do it on developmental because we have a test coming up, but I do want to do these on back ones so that we don't forget research, we don't forget. But that we'll do that right after a test. And we don't have a whole lot of time between test and test.
We
So
don't. That's a week. Literally a week.
Your next test will be less than a week after this one. And this is a long one.
how many questions are multiple choice questions on the test?
I almost always put 20 multiple choice. So you got 15 minutes. And then the FRQs, I usually pick 2. And in the actual exam, I think there's 3. But they're all large. I mean, they're like parts A, B, C, and maybe 2 parts. I mean, you got to answer them all. You want to answer them all. All right, 508, parents, peers, and early expectations. I want you to go to 509, Jacob.
Yes, sir.
Look at the rat that doesn't have a very nice cage, and look at how much their brain cells have moved compared to the rat that has all kinds of stimulation and how much more connections there are. And what is true for the rats is true for other mammals, including us. So the less impoverished environment you give kids to play in, the more neural connections they make. Okay? And the faster the learning will grow. And remember, we don't have a critical age, but we have a sensitive age. And your brain is growing fastest at the youngest ages. Make sense? So it makes more sense to do as much as you can at the younger ages. But interesting, what did I tell you was the cutoff for memory? When do you can't remember anything? Up to when? Infantile amnesia, up to 2 or 2.5. So are they actually learning anything if they can't remember it? They are. They're making neural connections. They won't be able to tell you they've remembered it, but they're learning it. And if you taught them Spanish at that young age, they might not know where they got it from, but it'd be in there. All right, so let's go to the rats in that page at the top of 509. The rats that had the better cages were, their brains were 7 to 9% heavier than the other brains. Now, how do they know that? Yeah, unfortunately. And this is a rat, not a cat or a dog, so you kill them. And you open up their brains and you weigh them. That's how they would know that. I mean, they wouldn't be able to pull this off on dogs or monkeys because what?
More intelligence?
What would the APA? Yeah, what would the APA say about cutting dogs' brains to measure how much they learned? No way they're going to do that. No way they're going to let them do that. The synapses, the connections, 20% stronger just with the different environment that they were in. All right, go to the middle of 509. Remember how I said we have a pruning process? If you don't use it, you lose it? Yes. Let me give you a quick example. There's an area in our brain in the occipital lobe that deals with vision. And if you have cataracts, it messes up your vision. It just blurs it up. Right? What if you had a cataract when you were a kid and they didn't get it fixed for a while? What if they fixed it then? You would be blind, but what if they fixed it? It wouldn't matter. Because if your brain has figured out that we don't need those neural connections for your eyes, it cuts it out. And if you then, fix their vision, they can see, but it'll never get interpreted back here. So they won't ever be able to interpret anything that they do see. So it'll almost be like they didn't see it. Right? And we're going to get that in here. So you don't use it, you lose it. Even on something that is so important like vision, we take it for granted. Right? Who can see the board well enough to read a couple paragraphs for us?
I think Antonio wants to read.
I can read it then. We're going at here at the juncture. So follow along since I'm reading this. Here at the juncture of nurture and nature is the biological reality of early childhood learning. During early childhood, while excess connections are still on call, youngsters can most easily master such skills as grammar and accent of another language. Lacking any exposure to language before adolescence, a person will never master any language. Likewise, lacking visual experience during the early years, those whose vision is restored by cataract removal never achieve normal perceptions. The brain cells normally assigned to vision have died or they've been diverted to doing something else. The maturing brain's rule is use it or lose it. Move on to the next page. And in fact, I'm almost done with this module right now. On the next page, how much credit or blame do parents deserve? Well, they gave you your genes, so that part, they get the credit or the blame for that. The rest of it, it's debatable. So here's what I want you to know. parents do matter as far as how you will turn out and how you'll end up being. And the best examples of why parents matter are at the good and the bad extremes. Like the perfect parents that are doing everything for you. You see a large number of those kids turn out, whatever, intellectually, go to college, whatever the heck those parents are pushing for. And at the other extreme, sexual abuse, physical abuse, total neglect, leave their kids covered in feces or whatever when they're babies, all of that kind of stuff. You see a limitation of the brain cells ever being able to mature because they've been totally pruned out. Abused kids often become abusive adults. Neglected kids oftentimes become neglectful adults. Kids that are loved, important here, but firmly handled. That means loved, but the discipline it's there. What type? Authoritative. Not, you can't do it because I said so, but you can't do it, and let's sit down and tell you why you can't do it. All right? Generally, they're socially confident, they're self-confident, and they're the best of the personalities that we like to shoot for there. How much does your personality come from your environment as opposed to your genes? The research shows less than 10%. Your personality is 90% coming from your genes, and a little bit can be changed by the environment.
I could see.
You buy that? Okay. All right, last thing, peer influence. The younger you are, the more your parents matter over your peers. But as you age, your peers start mattering more than your parents. You buy that?
Yep.
When you're 4, 5, 6, 7, your parents are more important to you than your little friends. But when you're 13, 14, 15, 16, your parents don't know anything anymore, and your peers are everything. We're going to read these bullets, the 3 bullets, and then I'm done with this module. Go back to peer influence. Preschoolers, thank you. Preschoolers who disdain a certain food will often eat that food if it's put at a table with a bunch of their friends around that like it. Children who hear English spoken with one accent at home and a different accent with their friends will invariably adopt the accent of their peers, not their parents. And then the last one on the next page, teens who start smoking typically have friends who smoke. Okay? Any questions at all? Let's answer a couple questions, and then that was fast module, right? 51 and 52 aren't much longer. So after 51, I'll take a short break. We'll play a Kahoot, and then we'll do the next one. Or I can CFU with you guys, either one. Okay? And maybe we can do both. All right. According to Plomin, now I didn't cover these guys. They're in your thing. 2 children in the same family are, apart from their shared genes, as different from who as are pairs of children selected randomly.
What? What are you reading? According to... Oh, I see now.
2 children in the same family are as different from one another as are pairs of children selected randomly.
One another.
That's one another's the answer, as I'm telling you that, because I didn't go over Plomin and Daniel. Compared with rats raised in an enriched environment, which of the following is true of rats in isolation?
The brain cortex is
Less developed.
A. What is a primary means by which parents influence the behavior of their children? Yeah, I mean, parenting style looks good, but don't just... Which one?
Yes, genetic contributions.
Influence behavior, not temperament, how they behave.
Yeah, but
Would that be their genes?
No, because the way you behaving that night.
It can be parenting styles. That's where the styles come in.
Ooh.
Neurologically, what is the function of pruning? What is pruning? Cut.
But it cuts out stuff we don't use.
Neurologically,
Eat. Unused neural pathways.
it does do that. And some of the unused neural pathways are gone, and some of them are devoted to take over. You know, there are people that lose the use of a few fingers, And you got a brain area in the motor cortex for those two fingers. And the brain doesn't want to waste itself. So it like morphs into helping another area out. Right? Those fingers are gone, so it can't do anything for them. So it actually, since it's not being used anymore, it like changes and maybe helps the other fingers or something.
So it's like if you become blind, your hearing is better.
Yeah, that's what happened there.
That's adaptation. I've talked to you about me. I don't hear well, but I hear really good with my eyeballs. All right? In other words, I can read your lips from 20 feet away. People have used me at parties before and said, hey, will you tell us what they're thinking over there? No, this is a long time ago, like 18 years, when I was 18 or so. They'd want to know what somebody's thinking over there. And
18 years or 18 years
That math doesn't quite work for me.
Huh?
18 years ago when you
I
were
meant
18.
when I was 18.
9 years ago.
I meant when I was 18. All right, let's do 51, and then we'll take a either a CFU or a Kahoot grade. All right. Module 51 is about your age, adolescence. Your physical development, so biologically how you're growing and changing, and your cognitive, or how you're mentally growing and changing. Physically, the big change to adulthood from adolescence, or to change to adolescence, is puberty, both for boys and girls. And puberty basically is a sexual maturity. It's when secondary sex characteristics, which we'll deal with later, and primary sex characteristics, which we'll deal with later, happen. Before that, they haven't happened. Okay? And that's both for boys and girls. The sequence of puberty is very predictable. It happens pretty much the same for everyone in the same order. Not at the same time. Some people could hit puberty at 8 or 9. Others might at 13 or 14. Maybe even as late as 16 or 17. And it could be different for boys and girls. But the sequence of the order of things that happen, those are relatively stable. For females, breast buds, pubic hair, almost always happens before menarche, which is the first period. Almost always. Psychological, how people react to your development, that changes, and that does influence a lot of things. I would never want to have to go through all those physical, mental, hormonal changes again. Fortunately, you only usually got to go through them once at puberty, and then there's other times later in life when you'll do them. Go to the top of the next page. What happens when somebody hits puberty or matures earlier? Is that a plus, or is that a minus to be ahead of your peers by a year or two? It's a little bit of both. Let's start with boys. For boys that hit puberty earlier, so, the muscles are a little bit bigger sooner, so maybe you'd think they'd get better dates or be better in sports or things like that. Generally, they are more athletic earlier. Generally, they're more popular earlier. Generally, they're more self-assured because they're ahead of all the ones that haven't hit that. However, some of the negatives is later on it tends to lead to a higher alcohol abuse rate. It tends to lead to more delinquency, juvenile delinquency, skipping school, getting in trouble. It often leads to premature sexual activity. For puberty, remember how we talked about the frontal lobes aren't already there until you're 25? At puberty, you hit a big spurt where they start growing fast. And what happens is, what is the fatty tissue on the outside of the axons? The myelin sheaths, fatty tissue, starts growing more in the frontal lobes at the onset of puberty, making the neural connections and the passages faster. So it makes it so that decisions are easier to make. Not necessarily always right, but it makes them easier to make. It does tend to help with impulse control, better judgment, not perfect judgment, because they're still going to make mistakes. Long-term planning is one of those frontal lobe things that's one of the last to develop. So although the impulse control might be a little bit better, do teenagers fly off the handle sometimes? Yes. Oftentimes, all right? It's still not all the way there. It's not all the way there for adults either, but the emotional limbic system. What are the 4 parts of the limbic system? Hypothalamus, hippocampus, amygdala, pituitary. What was my little trick for that? And you know what? It helped. You guys remember them all, right? Those are the emotional centers of when puberty hits. That's one of the last to develop. That's why they'll still fly off the handle. That's why the fear and the rage and aggression can be a little bit more outspoken and outgoing at that time. Impulse control is not as good. Decision making, it's not like kids your age don't know the consequences of a bad decision. It's not like kids your age don't know the consequences of beginning to smoke. They know that it can lead to lung cancer. They know it can lead to early death. But they misjudge the benefits of now for the paying later. Does that make sense? Same thing with starting sexual activities and stuff. They misjudge the benefits of now for possible pregnancy or STD or something else down the line. And again, I'm not saying adults don't do this too, but if you want to get somebody to start smoking, you want to get them early. The tobacco companies have always targeted your age. They don't target people like me. Why don't they hit ads for 50-year-old guys like me?
How long are you really going to be smoking?
No, that's not why.
I meant 50-year-olds in general, Foreman.
Right, but that's not why. If I'm going to smoke, you think I'm going to wait till I'm 50 to do it? No. They know that they've already lost me in all likelihood. If they're going to get me, they wanted to do it 35 years ago. Make sense? All right, and that's where the frontal lobe development is lagging behind, and that's why they target you. They're doing it for the money. All right, go to cognitive development. I want you to know the APA, although some of you guys don't. I think it's unlocked. Who you need? Do you know that the APA has actually petitioned the United States Supreme Court that if a 16 or 17-year-old commits capital murder, like first-degree murder, killed somebody, planned it, and actually went through it, the APA has actually petitioned the Supreme Court that they should never, ever get the death penalty because they could not be fully aware of the consequences of the final consequences of their action, which is kind of, I mean, it's probably true. And then again, you know, a heinous crime is a heinous crime. But in fact, it's almost like, and Myers uses this, it's almost like you're not guilty by reason of puberty or not guilty by reason of adolescence or something like that. And to an extent, it's true. All right, go to the top of 515. By the time you get to be your age, you are well equipped to debate big issues. What's right and what's wrong. Okay? Is cheating okay?
No.
Yes, no.
But why do most of you guys do it?
Who is most of you guys? Guys?
Hold on, how do you know that?
Most students anywhere in the school. What % of students in this school would say cheating is okay?
Probably like a good 25.
25? I'm thinking 99.
Not okay.
But they still do
25%
it.
would say it's okay.
Yeah,
But 75% would do it.
Yeah.
At least. At least. How many of you guys, you can be honest, how many of you guys have ever cheated on some kind of schoolwork?
Oh,
I thought you were going to say on a girl or like a...
yeah, everyone's
Not even
They
going
don't even
there.
have the same
Wait, you talking about
parameters you do,
relationship
Foreman.
cheating or cheating?
Okay, we'll go to that. Is relationship cheating okay?
No.
Obviously not. Those are things that you guys are well equipped to answer on that kind of stuff. Can you debate what's good and what's evil?
Yes.
And you've got your own moral compass for that. You can debate what's truth and what's justice. You're equipped for all of the big questions. Now you may change your answers later, but your brains are developed to that point where you can do those types of judgments. Going to developing morality, because you know where we're heading next, don't you, Sean?
What is it?
Morality.
Oh, yeah.
We're ready for another stage person, but this guy's an easy one too, and we won't even have to write him down. All right. There's two tasks of getting out of childhood and adolescence. Number one, learning right from wrong, which we all kind of do naturally. Most of us do naturally. All right. And developing some type of character, whatever character is. Becoming a moral person that you can live with yourself. All right. All of us have different grades of what's moral. I think that any cheating on homework and schoolwork and stuff is wrong. I think it's wrong. But then again, it's probably like so pervasive that I can't stop it all. And most of my assignments are pretty much due, not how hard they do, other than like some of the A-push DBQs and stuff like that. Let's go to Kohlberg real quick. Top of 516. Kohlberg is pretty easy. He does like a moral stage. And if hang with me, because I'm on the last page of this thing, and then we're done with this module. All right, I told you these were going to be fast. And the next one's fast too, because most of it is Erickson, and we've already covered Erickson. All right, Kohlberg has 3 stages for morality. Is it on behind me?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, he says up to about age 9, and by the way, it's just pre-conventional, conventional, post-conventional. You remember one word, and it's pretty easy to get him. Pre-conventional morality is basically that you want to do whatever you're supposed to do because it's in your interest. All right, self-interest, you obey rules so that you don't get in trouble. You don't get spanked. You don't get a 0. You don't get kicked out of school. All right? Example, if you save your wife, you become a hero. Not that you're saving her so you have more time, you're saving her so that whatever. You do it because it makes you look good. That's a little kid's view of things. That's pre-conventional morality. Questions on that? When you hit your not quite teen years, but right there, up until your early teen years, I'd say about 10 to 13 or 14, conventional morality, we should uphold rules and laws because people will look at us and they say, that's a good person. Right? Their quote would be, if you steal the drug, everyone will think you're a criminal. Don't steal the drug because it's not good. Don't steal the drug because you don't want people to look bad at you. Make sense? All right. Post-conventional is you guys and beyond, and that's doing whatever is the right thing to do. There's an ethical way of doing something, there's an ethical way of behaving and believing, and that is post-conventional. For example, people have a right to live. That could go into an abortion debate. That could go into a death penalty debate type thing. And I'm not trying to convince you on either of those issues, but your issue could be, let's say abortion. A woman has a right to deal with her own body, and another person could just as legitimately say, hey, you know what, inside her body is a living human being that just needs some time and a little bit of help to get out and be okay. And you could actually have a debate where both sides feel that they're right. They'll probably never change the other side. That's post-conventional morality. And you're not trying to say one because it benefits you, or you're not trying to say one because it'll look good. You're saying whatever you believe because you believe that's the ethical thing that there is. Okay? Now we've done 3 stage theories. We've done